3 with Menace now. Foul Emissary, another great card to sacrifice if you're choosing to emerge creatures. Doesn't find an emerged creature off it, but I don't think that Brian Braun-Duin can be too sad.
Nah, a Byway Courier is a fine pickup. At this point, BBD is ahead on board. The only thing that he has to worry about, as the board currently stands, is that Crow of Dark Tidings, which will finish him off in 5 more attacks. But given the amount of cards that BBD is drawing with that Foul Emissary, with the Byway Courier, when it dies, produce another clue. Currently, BBD will be able to develop his board over the course of the next few turns. And that ongoing investigation, well, it can also get rid of some cards in his graveyard for additional clues, additional life. So far, BBD is in a fine position.
Just the 1 card left in Yuya Watanabe's hand, and he didn't cast it in spite of having 6 mana available. But there are some very powerful cards in red and black that do cost more than 6. One of the bigger ones being Spreading Flames. 7 mana that can potentially, well, deal with a large amount of boards. It's actually not at its best against the Emerge deck because some of the Emerge Eldrazi do have gigantic amounts of toughness.
No attack for BBD. He still doesn't want to trade his 5/7 for the Death Touch creature. The Foul Emissary he would just be blocked by Traben Foulbloods. So, well, just a Byway Courier and passing.
Well, 7 mana also casts Bedlam Reveler, 2 instants and/or sorceries in the graveyard, meaning it costs. 1 in the graveyard, meaning it costs 7 rather than 6. And when you put this 3/4 into play, it has prowess, and when it enters the battlefield, you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. Absolutely ideal to cast it when you have no other cards in hand whatsoever. Yuya Watanabe getting a 3/4 prowess alongside his admittedly quite expensive Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, I've optimistically called this a 2 mana 3/4 prowess with a free Ancestral Recall attached. Now that is a bit too optimistic. Only in very specific situations it will work out that way. But well, even despite the cost, this is a big impactful play because it offers Yuya with a 3/4 creature that can block, say, the Byway Courier, thereby preventing BBD from gaining additional advantage with the ongoing investigation and depriving BBD of the ability to pressure Yuya's life total. Also lots of extra cards. So at this point that Crow of Dark Tidings, well, actually is becoming kind of a threat.
Yeah, it's not the biggest creature on the board, but it is the one that's killing Brian Braun-Duin, so he plays a Sleep Paralysis on it. It will not be untapping anytime soon.
Sleep Paralysis, a card that has gotten down in value a little bit thanks to the introduction of Emerge. Right now, enchanting opponent's creatures with effects that kind of deprive them from being able to attack or block. Not as useful because they can just be sacrificed for Emerge. However, there are most of the Emerge creatures are in green and blue, only few of them in black.
Well, Yuya Watanabe, big play there, casts Tormenting Voice and finds the reason that he's got white mana in his deck, that reason being Nahiri the Harbinger. Does not play it this turn. Gavony Unhallowed is the play for now. That a 2/4 that could potentially get bigger as and when any of his creatures die, but sooner or later Nahiri is going to be a big problem in what looks to be a fairly stalled board here.
Yeah, this is building up to be a huge board stall. High toughness creatures on both sides of the board. Sure, that ongoing investigation is nice, but looks like no player will be able to attack. Well, Bloodbriar in combination with Clues or Terrarion. Bloodbriar is an excellent card for the blue-green archetype. Starts off as a 2/3, and whenever you sacrifice a permanent, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that works with both Emerge creatures, as well as with Clues. So it works with the types of things that blue-green was doing, both in Eldritch Moon and in Shadows over Innistrad. Still, eventually, it can just be blocked by the Rancid Rats, so no huge concern for Yuya at the moment. Or perhaps even be exiled by Nahiri if it attacked.
It may well be that Yuya is going to get Nahiri down now just because he can see that the writings on the wall, things can get worse for him as the game goes longer. So many different ways of him getting advantage by gaining mana, but in the meantime, he can exile enchantments, chooses to start off with ongoing investigation. That the big source of ways of making the Bloodbriar bigger. That also the way that Brian may be able to gain a little bit of life. But at some point, sleep paralysis could go away as well, and at that point, Yuya Watanabe will have his big attacker back.
Yeah, and at this point, it doesn't look like BBD is able to pressure Nahiri. If he attacks with his Dranyard Behemoth, his 4-power Bloodbriar, and the Byway Courier, then Yuya can block the 3-2 with his 3-4, block the Bloodbriar with, say, 2 creatures, and then block the Dranyard Behemoth with Rancid Red. So, unless BBD has some kind of trick, that will not allow him to take Nahiri off of the table yet. Well, this won't help with attacking Nahiri on this turn, but it's still a perfect example of blue-green creating value, emerging Foul Emissary. Cheap Wedgegriff, you get a free 3-2 Eldrazi out of the deal. That is pretty solid, and the flyer is also quite important here, because at this moment Yuya does not have any defense for creatures with flying.
So Watanabe, with the life total advantage and with a big Planeswalker in play for now, does need to worry a little bit about that Wretched Gryff that's just come into play. But he's done a fair job for what is basically a red-black deck of card drawing, between initially casting that Bedlam Reveler, then a Tormenting Voice. Now he's got Nahiri to rummage with if he so chooses. This is a lot of card advantage for a color combination that normally doesn't do too much in the way of drawing cards.
For sure, and that Nahiri will dominate the battlefield, or at least the game for a while. We'll see if Yuya manages to find an answer for that Wretched Gryff. I do see a Cryptolith Fragment in his hand. That is an artifact that will transform at the beginning of your upkeep when both players are at 10 or less life. Also taps to produce mana and ping both players for 1. That may provide a blocker, because it transforms into a 1/4 flying for the Wretched Gryff eventually, but not this turn, the next, or the next.
For now, another copy of Graft Rats. We saw Midnight Scavenger going to the graveyard off Crow of Dark Tidings. In future games, we may get a chance to see a little bit of Meld. Meld, not something that comes up quite so often in limited games, though it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see it next weekend at the Pro Tour.
Yeah, Graft Rats and Midnight Scavenger, the only common combination of Meld cards. I've seen them come together in several games so far. Chittering Host, the 5/6 menace that you get out of the deal, can be quite an imposing creature, but even on this particular battlefield, it looks like the only creatures that really matter are the ones with evasion, because both players have so much toughness on ground creatures locked up at the moment. So BBD could attack Nahiri with Wretched Gryff, put it down to 1 loyalty, and then potentially take it down on the next turn. That is a perfectly fine angle of attack. A Wicker Witch, just a 3/1, clogging up the board a little more.
Yeah, all that's really there to do is add to the overall permanent count and give us more complicated things to consider. It's not particularly changing the face of this game in any meaningful way right now. And here he ticks up. +2 loyalty for every time that rummage is used. And +2 is a lot of additional loyalty, and that's one of the reasons that Nahiri has made such an impact in so many different formats.
It does look like that Nahiri will fall down to the Wretched Gryff on the next turn. That Cryptolith Fragment can ping both players down to 9 and 11, and then down to 8 and 10 on the turn thereafter. So in 2 turns, it may transform into the 1/4 flying that when it attacks will drain the opponent for 3, or at least force them to lose 3 points of life. But yeah, as I said, at the moment only those creatures with evasion seem to be the most important, because yeah, so much toughness underground. There's just no breaking through. And even if BBD would try to set up some attack with, for example, the Dranyard Behemoth and the Bloodbriar, the only thing it would really achieve is grow the Gavony Unhallowed from a 2/4 into, well, a much bigger size.
Well, it looks like there's some removal in hand for Yuya Watanabe. Starts off with a Geist Blast. That on its own will not be enough to deal with Wretched Griff, but I believe that there's a little bit more to come in the form of Galvanic Bombardment. It's an old-fashioned 2-for-1, or 1-for-2, depending on how you look at it, but dealing with Wretched Griff and keeping Nahiri alive, completely worth 2 cards.
That'll work. Yeah, this is exactly what Yuya needed. And now just, well, a Homunculus that may just trade for a Graph Red, so nothing too relevant. Yuya now being able to take up Nahiri, BBD without an ability to pressure it. Eventually, well, perhaps in a couple turns that Nahiri might go ultimate. We'll see if I can find the deck list of Yuya to see what kind of sweet creatures he might have in his deck for that ultimate.
And it may well be that at some point Nahiri simply gets rid of sleep paralysis and gives Yuya Watanabe another point of attack in the air. Though the Cryptolith fragment is not going to take too long to make it so that there's going to be an attacker in the air, even if the enchantment does not get dealt with.
I don't see anything super exciting in Yuya's deck list. Perhaps Abundant Maw, a 6/4, being the best thing that he might be able to get. So the ultimate of Nahiri not going to matter all that much from what I can see at this point.
A nice little sequence from Brian Braun doing there. Attacks with his Byway Courier. It dies to Gavony Unhallowed, but gives Brian Braun doing a clue. He then plays a second copy of Bloodbriar, sacrifices the clue, and each of his creatures gets a +1/+1 counter. Nice little addition, but this is small edges in a game where he's already kind of in pretty ropey shape here. Nahiri ticking up loyalty is a scary place to be.
Well, even without the ultimate coming into consideration, it's just one additional card every turn for Watanabe, allowing him to turn those excess lands into relevant spells. And that Cryptolith fragment, it may just start transforming on the next.
Wow.
How about another Planeswalker?
We have a double Planeswalker deck.
Why not?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is one way to do it.
Wow.
Liliana of the Last Hope. Well, you know what? Liliana with protection. This is an ultimate I can get behind, and you've done the maths on Liliana.
Yeah, I need to get my my formula for the ultimate ready, because I wouldn't be surprised to see an ultimate on Liliana in a couple turns from now on. Sure, she might also use her -2 ability to perhaps regrow, say, Midnight Scavengers. That wouldn't be too bad. But as long as you have 2 Planeswalkers and you are, well, being able to protect them, as well as getting relevant uses out of their +1 abilities, ticking up is often a good way to go. And that Curious Homunculus, or the 2/1 Skulk, may see another untimely death on the next turn. There's just not much that BBD can do. Sure, he can attack with some of his creatures, but one will be blocked by the Rancid Rats, another by, say, the Bedlam Reveler and some rats, which will eventually just grow the Gavony Unhallowed. Unless he has some pump spells or other tricks, I don't see a profitable attack for BBD. And even if he finds one, he also has to worry about the counter attack. If he swings out with all of his creatures, well, he may actually just be dead on the backswing.
How disappointing is it if you're Brian Braun doing to watch your opponent set up the Planeswalker section of their bit of the battlefield? Let's have all of our Planeswalkers over here on the left, ticking up all sorts of additional loyalty, and there will be a whole bunch of players with vested interests in making it into the World Championship who are looking at this, and they may well find themselves cheering on Yuya Watanabe here, because if it worked out that Seth Manfield was somehow able to pip Brian Braun doing at the post in terms of getting the invitation to the World Championship, Seth already has an invitation. He's already the world champion, and if he wins the race to get the most points at the GP level, that just means an extra at-large slot for someone who's earned a lot of pro points this season.
Yep, well, looks like BBD is tapping a lot of mana here, so something powerful is coming out. I believe I spot a Lashweed Lurker in his hand there. That may be the blue-green emerge creature, which he's just casting for the regular cost of, 8 colorless. putting his sleep paralysis. Now putting the Crow of Dark Tidings on top, so that he loses the sleep paralysis, thereby potentially denying Yuya the ability of taking out the enchantment with Nahiri. Well, it's nice, but it doesn't really help him pressure the planeswalkers. It doesn't provide an answer to this Aurora of Emrakul, which can finish off BBD in 2 attacks.
It looks like Yuya says, I want to do things a little faster than that, though. He's getting back Midnight Scavengers. We may be about to see some melding going on here, Frank Karsten.
Oh yeah, because Midnight Scavengers, when melded with a Graph Rat into Chittering Host, it will give all of Yuya's creatures +1/+0 as well as Menace. So it is conceivable that Yuya can actually set up a lethal attack here. Although, let's see, BBD has 7 creatures on the battlefield, which means he can line up at least blockers for 3 attackers. So, for instance, the Bedlam Reveler, the Chittering Host, and say the Traben Foulbloods, which would mean 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 coming through. Right, because the Vestige of Emrakul, when it attacks, drains for 3. So I believe this is going to be lethal. Thanks to the Chittering Host, all creatures have menace. BBD can only block 3 of them. And I believe that is enough damage coming through. Yep.
What a cool game of Magic the Gathering. 2 planeswalkers in play, Chittering Host ending things. I love watching meld creatures trying to somehow turn sideways and attack because they're so gigantic on the battlefield. It's just a bonkers ability that looks fantastic in play. Yuya Watanabe picking up that first game, and Brian Braun doing, I mean, at this point he's looking to his sideboard, and any counter magic that he must be coming in, because 2 planeswalkers, this is a big deal.
It's well, we don't see that too often. Now a quick live look in this match.
Yeah, Bensek against Scott Lip. Scott Lip, just the 1 draw off a perfect record thus far. Bensek, he's picked up a single loss. Both of these players definitely in the hunt for making top 8 here, and Bensek was saying going into this draft, you know what, just, you know, I just need to win, like, hopefully this round, and then maybe secure a draw sometime in the last 2, and I might be good enough. But a Lone Rider in play already for Scott Lip, alongside a copy of, well, it's dying off now, Brazen Wolves. Both of those creatures potentially pretty threatening. If that Lone Rider can get pumped in any way, or Scott Lip can find additional sources of life gain, then if it transforms, it becomes a very scary creature indeed.
Yeah, but if Scott Lip had a pump spell, he would almost certainly have attacked with the Lone Rider here. Now, Murderous Compulsion, the card that Bensek madnessed out of his Olivier's Dragoons, much better at instant speed, because Ben did not have to take the 4 damage from Brazen Wolves before killing it. Traben Standard Bearer, just a 1/1. You can discard a card to make another small token. Not a premium card. Many limited decks are not that interested in 1-drops, but it has gotten more valuable thanks to another white common in Eldritch Moon, that is Borrowed Grace, the card that can give your entire board +2/+2 for 5 mana at instant speed. With such cards, well, ways to make additional tokens are quite valuable, and as we already discussed just before the match started, that is often what this white-black archetype is trying to do: make tokens, exploit lots of creatures on the battlefield.
Now, Lupin Prototype has come into play for Scott Lip. That a rare that doesn't necessarily see quite so much play. Very, very powerful, assuming you can meet all of its conditions. A 5/5 creature for just 2 mana. But, Frank Karsten, you've been looking at this card a little bit for Modern. What is it that's so powerful about this card? What conditions need to be filled for it to work out?
Well, either of the 2 players has to be hellbent. That is, there needs to be 1 player with no cards in hand. Then Lupine Prototype can attack or block. Otherwise, well, it's big, it's 5/5, but will sit there on the battlefield unable to do anything. Now, so far, both players still have a bunch of cards in their hand, but it looks like Scott Lip is playing a white-red deck with a very low curve, so you're able to get to Hellbent fairly easily.
Well, we will have to leave this one in progress, because we are going to head back to our main match. Brian Braun doing, can he find a way to deal with the many planeswalkers of Yuya Watanabe? He's got the first play of the game in that homunculus there. It's getting stuck in. It's got Skulk, but it doesn't need it right now because Yu Yu Watanabe has no creatures yet going. But no play on turn 3 from Brian Braun-Duin either.
Also somebody strained from Yuya. He had Galvanic Bombardment. Would have been able to ping 2 damage to the Homunculus there, but chose not to, saving his removal spell for potentially a more threatening card down the road.
Yeah, Thraben Falbard's in play now for Yu Yu Watanabe, looking on as Grapple with the Past gets played by Brian Braun-Duin, just making sure that he hits his land drops and actually getting him pretty close to Delirium. We got an instant, we got a creature, we got an artifact in the graveyard already for him there.
Mm-hmm. Now he took the land. This will signal to, well, also Yuya that BBD has plenty of spells in hand. There's the first one, Enlightened Maniac, perfect card for the blue-green archetype. One of the creatures that are ideal for sacrificing for Emerge.
Well, it looks like Yu Yu Watanabe has his white mana, doesn't need it yet because Nahiri is not incoming, but plenty going on here. Got Midnight Scavengers already in hand, and that one really does play out very nicely with his copies of Crow of Dark Tidings. It plays out nicely, of course, with his rats, but this turn, instead, it's just the Gavony Unhallowed, the 2/4 that gets bigger as and when your other creatures die.
Yep, this means that Yuya currently has the board locked up in a way. He has the biggest creature on the battlefield, and even this trade, a 3/2 for a 3/2. It's favorable for him because the Gavony Unhallowed grows now into a 3/5. Now, curiously though, it means that the Skulk creature can attack. So this was actually the type of situation where a 2/4 may even be better than a 3/5.
And Wretched Griff there, drawing a card for Brian Braun-Duin, sacrificing a 0/2, which he really doesn't mind not having on the battlefield anymore, and critically giving him another evasive creature. Brian Braun-Duin's board here looking pretty well set up against what Yu Yu Watanabe's got going on. All of it able to get past the one lone creature that Yuya has in play. So Yuya says, if I'm not blocking, I might as well be attacking.
Well, there are plenty of tricks that Yuya could have here, ranging from Borrowed Malevolence to Borrowed Hostility, even a Tooth Collector from Shadows over Innistrad. So there are a lot of cards that would punish BBD from blocking. Even if Yuya may not have one of them, it's kind of a free attack for him. He would make this attack one way or another, but BBD is feeling confident enough in this game that he's not willing to offer his Wretched Griff. Not yet, at least.
And Yuya, he's got a few options here at 5 mana, just weighing up which one he wants to begin with.
Yeah, there are a bunch of heavy hitters. There's a Getseth Arsonist, 5/4 werewolf. I also see a Bedlam Reveler for, well, way later in the game, basically, whenever Yuya is out of cards.
Starting off with the Arsonists I like here, just putting more power on the board. He's going to be able to threaten some big attacks and more copies of Gather of the Past. So Brian Braun-Duin doing a good job of filtering his draws here. The fact that this is an instant really pushes it over the top to me. If it was a sorcery, it would already be quite good for decks looking to get Delirium and filter their draws a little bit. But as an instant, just a premium card that supplants Vessel of Nascency is my favorite way of getting Delirium, which is saying something.
Yeah, I love this card. Impulse is a good card. Regrowth is a fine card. This is basically a split card, Impulse, Regrowth, and that is quite powerful. It also had to give Yuya pause for a little bit because BBD passed with 3 mana up, could potentially have a counterspell like Convolute. So that instant effect can also put off opponents.
Also one of the cutest cards in the set, as you've got the Eldrazi reaching down the well to get the little toy bear. So big attacks there from Brian Braun-Duin, dropping Yu Yu Watanabe's life total just a little bit further. This is a real race that we got on our hands here. Watanabe on 9 life, and with sleep paralysis on those Getseth Arsonists, it's currently looking like a race that's in Brian Braun-Duin's favour. However, we know that there's a lot of power in Yu Yu Watanabe's deck yet to come.
Yeah, but Yuya needs to find answers for both of the unblockable creatures. This means either a flyer or a removal spell for the Wretched Griff to deal with the Curious Homunculus. Well, he has the Galvanic Bombardment that he neglected to play back on turn 2. Right now, maybe he wished that he had done so, because he's being bottlenecked on mana a little bit, and that little Homunculus has done a lot of damage. It will once again be able to attack into the 3 power Midnight Scavengers. potentially putting Yuya down to 4 life on this attack.
Well, Brian Braun-Duin, he's got a prey upon as well, just to make sure that the board stays clear. He does not want to see a Chittering Host coming along anytime soon.
Looks like Yuya forgot to put a counter on his Gavany and Hallowed.
There we go. And another Enlightened Maniac bringing an Eldrazi Horror with it. Turns out he knew what was going on all along.
So Yuya, does he have an answer for all of these evasive creatures? Sure, the 3/2 Eldrazi token, that one he can block with Gavany and Hallowed. But, well, there's this Wretch Griff and the Curious Homunculus to contend with. Well, he has an answer for the Wretch Griff, for the Homunculus in the form of Galvanic Bombardment at least. So he will be able to survive for at least one more attack.
I think a Graft Rat's also sat in hand for Yuya Watanabe, so he also has a potential blocker for the Sculpt creature. An attack in here by Watanabe. Brian Braun-Duin on 14 life. He's going to take a little bit of killing here, but with a 4/6 and knowing that he has in hand both a blocker and a removal spell, he kind of wants to get the damage in where he can. Kills off the Enlightened Maniac, Thraben Purebloods, and a Graft Rat, and leaving some mana up for that Galvanic Bombardment.
Yeah, now I would be really surprised if Yuya is able to put together 14 damage on the next attack, but this is something that BBD will have to worry about. Bouncing the Graft Rats because BBD does not want to see a melded Chittering Host on the next turn.
Yeah, drag under there, dealing with the Graft Rats in play. Yuya Watanabe on 1. There's one clear target that he needs to find a way of dealing with. Nothing else really matters, because no matter what he's able to do on the board, if he can't deal with the flyer, he is done for. And that is it. We will see a game 3 here between Brian Braun-Duin, who is pushing to potentially make a trip to Worlds based on his finish at Grand Prix. Yuya Watanabe, who will definitely be at Worlds and potentially might be being inducted into the Hall of Fame soon enough, as he is up for voting for the first time this year and has had a huge amount of support. One of the players that has been described by many as the best in the game.
Yuya is a machine.
But heading back to this match between Scott Lipp and Ben Sek, they are in Game 3 and already a relatively advanced Game 3. It That Rise Alone is transformed there, the Lone Rider, 4/4 lifelink, first strike, just terrifying bit of trample on there too. This is a problem for Ben Sek, even though he has got one of the more powerful rares for the black-white tokens archetype in play.
Sanctifier of Souls. Yeah, it is a strong card, but well, this dealing with that that writes as 1. I just love these names on the backsides of cards. So flavorful. The 4/4 first strike lifelink. That's not easy.
Yeah, it's a scary monster right there, and it's one of those cards that it looks innocuous on the front side, a 1/1 first strike lifelink, but there are so many different ways of enabling the transformation.
So the Sanctifier of Souls on Ben Sek's side of the board, it's currently just a 2/3. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield on his side, it would get +1/+1, and he can pay 3 mana and exiling a creature card from his graveyard to get a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. So in his graveyard, it looks like there are at least 2 creatures. So if that's indeed the case, he has the option of activating it twice and getting some spirit tokens. Apparently did not do that.
Well, it may be that he wants to hold back on doing that until That Rides as 1 attacks, because as those tokens come into play, the Sanctifier of Souls gets bigger. If he puts 2 creatures into play, suddenly it's a 4/5, and it's able to block the otherwise problematic creature.
That's a good point.
So Dawn-Gryph coming into play for Ben Sek here. 2 points of damage in the air is 2/3 of the way to killing Scott Lipp. Scott Lipp on just 3 life here.
Yeah, he may have to start trying something, at least attacking with it that rides as 1 on this turn. Well, and now we can actually set up a favorable attack, because the Sanctifier of Souls won't be available as a blocker. Quickly activating it before no longer able to with the Bonds of Moonsilver.
Yeah, Bound by Moonsilver, different to Choking Restraints in as much as it doesn't just stop attacking and blocking. forces a little bit more action.
So so there's a bit of discussion between the players here. Oh no, another activation. So now if Skotlib would attack with It That Rides as 1, which has first strike, Bensek can not really line up a good block. If he blocks with all 4 of his creatures, then Skotlib will just kill a 1/1 token, another 1/1 token, and the Dawn Gryph with first strike, and then his creature will survive. So Skotlib will go up to 7 life one way or another. But hey, look at how much power worth of flying TBS still has on the battlefield. There is 1, 2, 3, 4 spirit tokens. There's ooh, sweet. There was a Dawn Gryph, but very smartly Skotlib moves the Bond by Moonfit Silver over to the flyer to make sure that he doesn't die to flying damage here.
We will bring you exactly what happens in this matchup, but I've heard that the other players are now ready to start in this deciding game, which is a big high-stakes game for Brian Braun doing here. And Yuya Watanabe, interestingly, has blue mana available to him in this game. Could he have a 4-color deck with 2 Planeswalkers? This seems very intriguing.
Yeah, he may have boarded it in, actually, as BBD takes a Wicker Witch.
Yeah, the Wicker Witch coming down on turn 3. Not necessarily going to be long for this world. It may simply be that the blue mana is just for that Geist Blast. Geist Blast allowing him to give a second bite of the cherry for some powerful spell.
That is correct. Been going over Yuya's deck list. There's no blue card that he's playing. It's just indeed for the flashback. And hey, putting a Highland Lake instead of a mountain in your deck is a low enough opportunity cost.
Yuya Watanabe decides that he does not want his Stallion of Ashmouth tangling with an Eldrazi Horror, at least for now. Happy to trade blows to begin with. And that may well be because there are quite a few ways that his deck can dish out 2 damage. Terrarion coming into play for Brian Braun doing.
It of the Horrid Swarm. Well, a 4/4 and 2 1/1s. BBD ahead on the board early on in the game. Stallion of Ashmouth certainly cannot attack into It of the Horrid Swarm unless Yuya wants to bluff some kind of trick. For instance, Borrowed Malevolence or Borrowed Hostility. But that would be kind of a risk, as Yuya has none of those cards in hand. It looks like just a bunch of big creatures. There's a 5-drop. There's an Abundant Maw, which Yuya could put on the battlefield by sacrificing his Stallion of Ashmouth. It would be a 6/4 that drains the opponent for 3 points of life. The problem with 6/4 is that it would trade for It of the Horrid Swarm, so that's not a perfect creature for this situation. Still, apparently the best that Yuya can muster for this turn. At least, potentially it can block the 3/2 Eldrazi and keep the 1/1 tokens at bay.
And Yuya has left 1 mana up to at least threaten there might be a Galvanic Bombardment or similar coming along. And as it happens though, Sleep Paralysis, meaning that the board is clear and an ongoing investigation. This is a gigantic attack here from Brian Braun doing. Getting the damage in, getting a clue, also just reducing Yuya Watanabe's life total substantially there. That a huge attack for 4, 7, 8, 9. And while there's Gatstaff Arsonist for Yuya Watanabe here, he's on 11 life, and if there's any kind of follow-up here from Brian Braun doing, then this game could be over super fast.
Yeah, any blue bounce card or anything of the sort, that would be incredible for BBD, but looks like he has a bunch of lands. Sacrifice some more clues in search of a way to get rid of that Gatstaff Arsonist, if at all possible.
He's tapping 3, 4 mana. That a Sleep Paralysis.
Another one.
And more big swings. Yuya Watanabe here, clinging on by a thread. And there's the handshake. That is how you do it against a 2 Planeswalker deck. You simply enact your game plan, do it good and fast, hope that they don't draw into them and get them dead before they can cast those Planeswalkers. Because if one of them costs 1 black and the other one costs 2 red-white, the mana is going to be a little bit stretched in that deck, and sometimes it might not pan out. Brian Braun doing able to find a way of it, propelling himself to 11 and 2, and that a very big deal for him in his chasing of getting the title of Master of the Grand Prix. And it means that we do get a chance to see the conclusion of this match between Scott Lipp and Ben Sek, because Scott Lipp has not been able to quite push through all of these spirit tokens. Look at them in play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spirit tokens alongside that Sanctifier of Souls. Scott Lipp on 10, Ben Sek on 5. This a very close race also.
So at this point, Scott Lipp is able to gain 6 life a turn with that right as 1, and Ben Sek is not really able to line up good blockers for it due to it having first strike. Now there's a Borrowed Malevolence boosting the Sanctifier of Souls, killing a Field Creeper, or rather a Steadfast Cathar, although Ben Sek pointed to the Field Creeper first. So this is Grand Prix Day 2 being played at a professional rules level. So if you make a play, then that is something that you are typically held to. One way or another, just analyzing the board state, Scott Lipp is super far ahead with that 6/6 first strike. Lifelink, thanks to Lunarch Mantle, he can also sacrifice a permanent and give it flying. Not that it really matters, because pretty much all of Ben Sek's creatures already have flying. And Ben will have to block it that rides as 1. You can't even just jump block it, because it has trample as well. This is not a good position for the Australian.
I mean, at 11 and 2, it's not as if his dream is over, but he would much rather pick up a win here and basically put himself in a position where he's 1 draw away from making top 8 almost assuredly.
Yeah, thanks to trample, he has to block the 6/6 with at least 2 creatures if he wants to survive this turn. And even then, Scott Lipp will gain a lot of life.
Yeah, I mean, this one of the cards that if I see it early on in a pack of Eldritch Moon, I'm thinking of drafting exactly this kind of a deck. The deck that just says, if I can transform this guy, I am going to cause all sorts of bother for my opponents.
It ranges from powerful to unplayable. Wow, dual shot, taking out both of the blockers and trampling over for the final damage. That'll do it.
Yeah, Ben Sek has a look on the top of his deck, sees a throttle, which would have obviously been huge, but not in time. And that is the end of our feature matches from the area. We have had some just spectacular matches. You can see this. Seth Manfield is playing against Eduardo Sage Gallic in our feature match area. Also, that one that we'll be able to bring you a kind of time-shifted match on soon enough. But
So
yeah, big plays.
Yeah, so far the main standout for me in this round has been creatures with flying. We saw them being super important in the match between Yuya and BBD, especially in the long game, where the board was just clogged up, and eventually the creatures with evasion, with flying, ended up mattering. And now also in this match here, the creatures with flying, although they didn't end up mattering against it that rides as 1, they allowed Ben Sek to stay in this game and play for quite a while.
Yeah, it was interesting to me to see the difference in terms of how things worked between games 1 and games 2. They're like big bombs in game 1 for you. Ultimately, though, just enacting a game plan for Brian Braun doing enough to take him to victory there with his Emerge deck. But that is the end of our live matches. We will be taking a quick break here, but you will have more matches from this round to see with Brian David Marshall and Marshall Sutcliffe in the area very shortly here from GP Sydney.